This is a Hipsters of the Coast podcast. This Doomed Travelers podcast is brought to you by Hipsters of the Coast, your destination for magic news, strategy, and entertainment. And by Casthaven, where you can build your magic collection like a pro. Visit casthaven.com for more information.
All right, welcome to another episode of Doomed Travelers, where we play Destiny and talk about Magic the Gathering. This week, we're going to be talking all about Grand Prix Las Vegas. You may have heard of it. I'm joined this week by Dave McNasty McCoy, who I'll be playing some Clash matches with on the new House of Wolves maps, and Brendan B. McNamara. Both of whom attended Grand Prix Vegas. I did not make the trip out to the Sin City. I'm your host, Rich Stein, and let's get right into it. Did you guys win a lot of money at the poker tables? BMAC.
I got in on Thursday morning, and I played about 4 hours Thursday afternoon before I went to the site, and I was playing like just 1-2 no limit hold'em. So like you buy them for $300, and I got up with $660, so that was
nice.
quite good. That was really nice. It was a good start to the weekend. And
That's
then I didn't
good.
play anymore during the GP just because I wanted to stay focused on Magic, and
Right.
I didn't have that much time. But on Sunday, after we got back from our exciting dinner, I didn't fly out till Monday morning, so I went and played for another couple hours and made $75 more, which is solid. So
yeah, it pays for some of the trip, right?
Yeah.
Dave, you hit any of the casinos?
I lost $2 betting on the over and under of when the waiter would arrive at our table and when our food would arrive at our table. That's the extent of my gambling losses for the weekend.
Oh man, that is
very disappointing.
I know. I'm terrible at gambling. Like, I know that I'm going to lose all my money, so why would I even try?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair bet. I haven't gambled since I was in Atlantic City a very long time ago. Not the Grand Prix a couple weeks ago, but many, many years ago. Since then, I have not tried very much. The last time I played poker at a casino was on a reservation while I was out in the Southwest. And it was funny because it was one of those, they had a house rule, which was if you get dealt pocket aces, and you get busted, they will give you $100. And I sat down at the table for the day with $100, and I was pretty much broke by the time I got dealt pocket aces, and I got busted by pocket queens. And I got $100, and I left with $110 after playing poker for about 4 hours. So that's the last time I played poker at a casino. So anyways, enough about boring card games like poker. Let's talk Magic. Grand Prix, Modern Masters. I'm assuming your sealed pools had all the same foil rare, right?
No rusted relics for me.
No rusted relics? No, how was the experience? How was the sealed format?
I really liked it. It's weird because there's so much fixing, and there is like a whole archetype for 5-color. You know, there's a few domain cards like Skyreach Manta, Tribal Flames, those things, and there's a couple basic land cyclers and a couple like Rampant Growth Effects and Evolving Wilds. And so basically almost all the good decks were slow 5-color decks that played all their removal and all their bombs and whatever other synergistic or solid creatures that they could play. Maybe some card draw. I had 2 buys. I built that kind of deck. My pool didn't really have bombs, but I had 9 removal spells and some decent creatures. So I put that together, and every round I played against a deck similar to mine. But it was fun. You know, there's a lot of interactive Magic, plenty of room for sideboarding. I was lucky that I had 3 of the color hoser sideboard cards.
Oh, okay.
I was just looking over my seal pool now as I'm preparing to write my article for the week, and
Right.
kind of seeing like, oh, I actually had like a decent like red black aggro deck I could have sided into maybe. Like the round 9, I lost to Karn, and that's a way to beat Karn. But
Yeah.
I definitely, that's like sort of the next level of being a good sealed player, is being able to recognize when you actually can just have a second deck that you pull in to surprise people, like in a game 2 or game 3.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where, like, when you're first starting out as a limited player, you're like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'm going to build 2 decks. And then you stop doing that. And then you get much better, and you're like, oh, look at all these different options I have. Let me, make sure I've got this extra deck half built so I can, board into it quickly. So it's kind of a weird cyclical thing that happens with second decks. But
yeah, and it would have actually worked pretty well for me because there's only like 4 cards that overlap between them. So
right. So people would have been totally caught off guard.
Yeah,
what about you, Dave? How was your sealed pool?
My pool was pretty miserable.
Yeah.
I had an Elish Norn, and that's about it. So I ended up building a green-white deck with Elish Norn at the top, and splashing black and splashing red so that I could have a removal spell or 2. I
hear those are good.
Yeah,
generally.
it was pretty brutal. There was no synergy, very little power other than Elish Norn, and it was absolutely miserable to play. Yeah.
So no day 2 for you, huh?
No day 2, nothing even close to a match win with that deck.
Oh man, that's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough. So. And no. Did you draft it all on day 2 anyways?
I did 2 drafts. I thought I had 2 solid decks.
Yeah.
But they were both 5-color decks, and one match I lost because I didn't draw the white for the 2 white spells in my hand, and the other one I lost to a very, very good 5-color elemental deck.
Yeah, I hear that deck is solid.
Yeah, I mean it was totally dependent on the Smoke Braiders, but when it had the Smoke Braiders and online, it was just it was 2 turns ahead because it creates 2 mana for an elemental.
Yeah, of course.
It's just really very, very, very strong, and my awesome 5-color control deck couldn't get there. When you're playing like 2 or 3 of those 5/5 4/4s for 3 of Rakdos. Yeah, that card is hard to kill in
Ashen Morgul.
Yeah, so
that card is very good.
Yeah,
that card was a beast when they released it.
Well, it's actually an elemental, but good try.
Well, whatever it is, it's it was one of those things. Elementals back in Lorwyn block just never really took off as a deck. And that's because as good as Ashen Morgul was as a 3-drop, it just wasn't as good as Boggart Ram Gang, which you guys may or may not be familiar with. But it was a 3/3 haste for 3 or a 4/3, but it had Wither, so
it just couldn't block it.
Yeah, it may as well have said 3/3 like unblockable. So BMAC, you draft on you drafted. What do you think of the draft format?
I think it's really sweet. One of the things I like about draft formats is just being able to kind of put together interesting cross synergies and be creative and maximize the cards you get, so that even if you don't just get to draft the nut deck in some archetype, you can still pull it together. Although my first draft on day 2, I got the nut archetype.
Oh well, that's fair.
Yeah.
So in the vein of cross drafting, right? Pulling different cards across. So if you were, let me give you a completely hypothetical scenario, Brendan, and tell me what you would do in this case. You're pack 2, pick 1, and pack 1 you've got a strong Boros deck, and you open up pack 2 and you're going through your cards. You see the Burst Lightning, great removal spell, and then you get to the back and there's a foil Tarmogoyf. What do you do?
I think about it a long time.
Completely hypothetical situation, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think that if it's pack 1, pick 1, you take the Tarmogoyf. for sure, because besides assuming that you're not trying to consider value and rare drafting in the abstract because you're in a top 8, I think you still take it because it's actually quite a good card. And Burst Lightning is a good removal spell, but it's not even necessarily a first pick removal spell, I don't think. But if you already have a good Boros deck and you're drafting in the top 8 of Grand Prix Vegas, and you also happen to be among the leaders of Grand Prix points for the year, then the winner of that at the end of July gets, or August maybe, gets a spot at the World Championship. That's right. And you also could theoretically make Platinum. You're already a Gold Pro.
But come on, it's a foil Tarmogoyf.
I know. Well, so I think that, clearly you want to do everything you can to win the draft. And honestly, I don't think the Burst Lightning, taking the Burst Lightning out of the deck, putting it into his deck is a very small upgrade. It is an upgrade.
Right.
Probably. But
to an extent, you also have to signal properly, right?
Yes.
That Burst Lightning goes a few more packs to your right. And now all of a sudden, somebody who was maybe thinking of splashing red is all of a sudden definitely splashing red. And then pack 3, you're not getting as much back anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot
is worse than just the loss of value of that spell.
Right.
Because looking at the deck that I draft and play in the top 8 hypothetically, I'd probably cut something along the lines of Mighty Leap or Brute Force, which in a deck where you have a lot of double strikers and you're just turning your creature sideways and attacking is basically a removal spell anyway. It's not quite as good as have trample, but
there's so much more going on. What about you, Dave? Would you take the foil Tarmogoyf?
I think I'd probably be a deer in the headlights and go to time on that pick and not even see the rest of the pack. So
have you guys watched the video coverage?
No,
because it happened on video, and he's basically he's just going through the cards and going back and forth between the two cards for the whole 30, 40, however much time you have to make the first pick in a pack. Yeah. And it's just hilarious because you're just the commentary is the commentary, but you're just watching it, and it was possibly the most entertaining moment of the weekend was waiting to see what card ended up getting picked. And it's funny because it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, right? If he took the Tarmogoyf, and clearly everybody's like, oh my god, I can't believe he took the Tarmogoyf. If he doesn't take the Tarmogoyf, everyone's going to be like, oh my god, I can't believe he just passed up $300. So I think it was just an incredibly entertaining scenario. And
if he picks the foil Goyf and wins the GP anyway, it's Magic history. Aren't you supposed to be making Magic history at this thing?
Yeah, somebody said that Tarmogoyf could. Somebody on the finance blog was like, "Oh, this Tarmogoyf could end up being a really valuable Tarmogoyf because it's got a story behind it."
Yeah, I think if I were Pascal Maynard and I made this decision, and I think the reason that he made the decision was primarily because he is someone who plays a lot of Magic, but has had trouble being able to afford going to Grand Prix, and the $500 was actually meaningful for him in a situation. In a situation like that, if I got that, I would try to frame it or seal it in some way to prove the authenticity that this was the only foil Tarmogoyf ever drafted in the top 8 of a professional event.
Right.
Ever. Maybe another one will happen a few years down the road in the next Modern Masters.
Right. Get a judge to come over and sign a statement right then and there, and then just ship it on eBay, man.
Yeah, I think that a collector. I wouldn't be surprised if you could sell that to a collector for over $1,000, maybe multiple thousands, if you want.
Yeah, I hope he does. I hope he makes out for it because he didn't win the Grand Prix.
Well, and I also think it's really funny that a lot of pros. Everyone was kind of razzing him and trolling him on the fact that he didn't make the absolute best pick, and I think it is the better pick if your sole goal is to improve your deck for the GP is the Burst Lightning. But one thing I thought about is that a lot of pros will do prize splits with their friends, or like they'll say each of will pay 10% of their winnings to the other, which helps even out the variance. And if Pascal Maynard had a prize split with someone else and then he took the Tarmogoyf, he better split the money, give him 10% of that money to the person he splits with. But if he didn't, if he's like someone who doesn't have the advantage of being able to even out the variance with friends like that, it's kind of the same thing because it's worth 10% of the prize pot. I mean, obviously, winning a GP can get you a little more money than just the prize money, and a few extra pro points could have potentially gotten him a chance at like a world championship and things like that. Yeah. So I think it's not quite really. He was giving up more than he was. But I also think that people vastly overestimate like their ability to even like understand or calculate very, very small percentages and whether it's worth it. And like, I think there's so many tiny, you always say don't do anything to cost yourself the slightest edge, because Magic is such at the high level at least, is such a game of very thin margins. But there's just so many things that people do, like eating a cheeseburger and a giant thing of fries in the middle of the tournament, that lowers their win percentage more than not picking up burst lightning does, just because it mess with your body and your ability to concentrate, or make you have to go to the bathroom or whatever. And like no one gets up in arms about someone making a bad decision like that, or people who go out and party after they make day 2 on Saturday night and then are hungover on Sunday, which is a horrible play and it's much worse than rare drafting a Tarmogoyf in the top 8.
That's for sure. Yeah. I think it's definitely situational. I think it's a marginal thing, and it's honestly if he wanted the money, then he gets the money. If he felt he really needed the burst lightning, or I guess if there'd been a better card maybe, or if it had been the Pro Tour instead of a Grand Prix, right? Then maybe it's a different story. But I just think it's a hilarious situation because people made it out to be such a big deal.
I was at dinner, because we were eating dinner during the top 8, and I was checking Twitter, and I saw a couple people saying things about like, do you take the foil Tarmogoyf? And I didn't know if that was just a hypothetical question or if that actually happened. And then I found out.
It turns out it actually happened.
Like this morning. Twitter was just ablaze.
Have you ever windmill slammed a rare that you didn't need for your deck over a card that maybe would have been good? Dave, any windmill slams?
I mean, in a tournament that mattered, no.
What about in a tournament that didn't matter? What's your favorite windmill slam of all time? I mean, clearly this is going to be. I mean, this wasn't a windmill slam, but I think this is definitely a pretty memorable.
I mean, most of my windmill slams that weren't for my deck were in TDL, and they were all hay drafts. So.
So I actually did. On the first draft of day 2, I third picked an Emrakul, and it happened because the first pack of that draft was just really, really weak in general. I think everyone who I talked to in my pod throughout those 3 rounds said that after the first pack, no one knew what they were doing because there weren't good cards to take, and so like I had taken a Wilt Leaf Leech first pick, and I think that the green-white tokens deck is the best archetype if you can get it, or it's at least awesome. And Wilt Leaf Leech is about the best card you can have in that deck. And so I took that, and then I took like a Nest Invader second or something, which is also great in that deck because it helps you convoke and all that stuff. But third pack, like there was not a single card. There wasn't a good card for another deck that would make me think about moving, and there wasn't even like a playable green or white card. The only card I even could take was Sylvan Bounty, which is a good card, but not in the tokens deck. And so I just took the Emrakul because I'm like, value, And then the Sylvan Bounty wheeled, and so I took it then and didn't play it. But
I'm always excited about the lowest risk slam cards. My first windmill slam moment ever was opening a Spirit Monger in a pack of Apocalypse way back when. I was definitely not in black or green. at that time. And I ended up opening Spiritmonger and getting past Pernicious Deed, and ended up playing the worst 5-color control deck I'd ever played in Limited. But Windmill Slams are fun, and rare drafts are fun. So no, it sounds like Vegas was a great time for everyone involved. Hopefully we'll be able to get Matt on next week, because he actually enjoyed playing Magic for possibly the first time in decades. But yeah. Any final thoughts? Would you guys go back in 2 years? Modern Masters 2017?
Yeah. It's a nice tradition. It's a fun city to visit and not have to think about for 2 years.
Yeah, it's
B-Mac,
great.
you gonna come?
Yeah,
All right,
I
I
like
guess
going to Vegas.
I'll have to try to get there. Maybe in 2 years we'll record this stupid podcast live in Vegas or something.
Yeah, it really was amazing, like how many people were there, and like I ran into people. I actually met a friend of mine, who we used to be members of a Final Fantasy message board, like back when that was a thing that people did, like in the 90s or maybe the early 2000s. And we never actually met, but there was a long tradition at that board of people who would like go to things and meet up at stuff like this, and he actually works for Blizzard now, and he plays a little bit of Magic. And
that's if that isn't the right way to end the podcast, I don't know what is.
Hey Guardians, thanks for tuning in to the Doomed Travelers podcast. You can find more at doomedtravelers.com or follow at Doomed Travelers on Twitter for show updates and other nonsense. Make sure to subscribe to Hipsters TV on YouTube for videos of our previous episodes, and don't forget that you can find audio-only versions of the Doomed Travelers podcast on iTunes. For your host, Rich Stein, and Matt the Obliterator Jones, I'm David Bones McCoy. See you next time.
William Howard Tuck.
Dave, you didn't mention the best part of Vegas, which was eating dinner while the building caught fire.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
What? Eating dinner while the building caught fire?
Oh yeah.
That's exciting.
So after we all finished day 2 on Saturday or on Sunday, there was this like British pasty place, which I guess is like sort of like pot pies inside, like sort of like a calzone sort of thing, and it happens to be in the same really, really weird, sketchy shopping center as Lotus of Siam, which is like the Thai restaurant that all the Channel Fireball guys swear is like the best place to eat ever. Ochoa doesn't swear to that because he eats at the best places ever, but even he says it's good. And so I guess Dave and Hunter's friend Dave,
Yeah.
the other Dave, had gone over there on Saturday trying to go to Lotus of Siam, even though they knew they were about to close. But this shopping center is like this just really rundown, sketchy looking strip mall that's completely full of ethnic restaurants.
All right.
and so we went back on Sunday, and Hunter and Dave went to the Colonial Pasty or whatever it's called, which makes me think of a burlesque show, but it looked pretty good. But Kadar and I just really wanted some vegetables because it's hard to eat vegetables in Las Vegas. And there was another Thai restaurant right next to the British place. And they apparently are like an award-winning vegan restaurant. So and they had like a 5-page menu just dedicated to vegetable stuff. So even though we both ended up getting a little bit of meat, it ended up being really good. But so we're in there, and so we're eating separately from Dave and Hunter, but at the same time next door. And Kadar goes to the bathroom like right before our entrees come out, and we'd gotten a couple appetizers that were great. And he comes back and he's like, oh my glasses are a little foggy. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. And so we're eating, and right when we get our check, like we start noticing smoke like collecting inside the restaurant, and like there's been banging on the ceiling or the roof. and like suddenly like 3 firemen come walking out of the kitchen, and we're like, what the hell's going on? So we pay our check because we were like, wow, this is a really good meal. Kadar, went at 11-4 and finished in like 70th
Right.
place or something, and
Oh, wow.
he'd never even made day 2, and he had to win his last 5 matches of day 1 to make day 2, and so it was a huge, incredible weekend for him. And he and I were just, and I cashed all, so I ended up 11-5 at 188th. And so we were just having this afterglow and eating this really good Thai food. And as we're paying, we're like, what is this building on fire? And like the firemen are talking to the management up front, and they're like, yeah, everyone needs to leave. And we're like, so we walk out, and we like stick our head in next door at the British place, and it is not smoky yet, but there's also the commotion, and the firemen like have been in and out. And so we go and talk to Hunter and Dave, and like they're busy paying their bill while everyone else in the restaurant is just leaving without paying their bill. And then we go out, and there's like a giant fire truck, and like, there's like 2 fire trucks and flashing lights, and like 6 firemen, and Brian Kibler standing dazed on the sidewalk.
Wow.
And we were like, we had really good timing, I guess.
Got to watch the whole thing burn down.
Yeah,
huh?
the kicker is that one of the cooks at the pasty shop had poked his head out of the shop to see what was going on with the fire trucks, and came back in. And the other cook asked him, "Hey, what's going on?" And the cook responded, "Well, I think our building's on fire again."
Again.